Hi, this is the demo video for our bulk bone namer tool. This tool helps you create complex naming rules to get your skeletal mesh skeletons renamed in one go. So to start, we're going to begin by launching the tool from the menu. So under the QOOBIT menu, under rigging, you'll see bulk bone namer. So after you click that, you'll see the UI pop up showing something like this. To start, we'll have to load in one of our sample skeletal meshes into our tool. So we'll begin by dragging and dropping this one. Alternatively, you can click the drop down and search for your mesh in the asset browser here. So after we've loaded a mesh into the slot here, you'll see that all the skeleton bones show up below underneath it. So to start using this tool, we have a couple of ways to add rules. The most basic way is just to click add rule. And after we click that, you'll see a new rule row show up underneath here. Another way to add a rule is to mouse over an existing bone and click the plus button beside the bone. What this does is it will pre-populate a rule into the slot here with the exact match criteria and the bone name that you selected. So what are these rules that we're doing here? When we add a rule, you'll see that on the left side here is the match condition. So what we'll have here is we have a condition of whether we want to have an exact string match, a contains string match, a starts with or ends with. For example, if we're looking for contains, we can look for something like _C. And you'll see something like here, down here, where everything that has an _C in the name gets captured in the current rule set. And if we want to be more strict, we can also check this box to match case. So in this case, if we typed in a lowercase c, it would not fulfill the match criteria. Then if we type in uppercase C, it will fulfill the match criteria. So where is this helpful? Is if, let's say we take something like _L here. Let's say we have this _L here that refers to everything that's on the left side of a mesh. What we can do is we can choose the replacement criteria, or you can see here we have in place, prefix, or suffix. We can replace it with _L here. So now that you can see everything that has _L_ has now shifted and has a renamed rule that puts the _L at the end of the word. So you can see that you can, with a few rules, you can kind of rename a lot of the bones in your mesh with minimal effort. With the exact match rule, what's really useful is if you have very specific naming that you can't really capture with rules, or alternatively, you have a broad scope rule and you've captured a bone that you didn't want to capture, you can click the add exact match rule and just define an override for the name with an exact match rule at that point. All right, so next we want to talk about is just deleting rules. So there's a few ways to delete rules. So if we add a few rules here, one option is just to click the trash can icon beside each row to delete the specific row. Alternatively, you can click delete all rules to clear all existing rows. If you have multiple rules added, you can also rearrange the order of evaluation of the rules. So by clicking the up and the down arrows, you can move the rules up and down the list. If you don't want to evaluate certain rules, you can also uncheck them so that you can see that these aren't evaluated. So this is where this is helpful, is you can uncheck them for debugging so you can see whether a rule is doing exactly what you want it to do. And usually the rules run with a priority from top to bottom. So if you have them all checked, it will evaluate first all the way down to the end. On top of this, we also have some template rules. So in the most basic case scenario, if you're not following any Unreal hard conventions, we have this rule here called left and right. And what this does is takes general case scenarios where you have the word left or right, or whether it starts with L_ or _R, and it changes it to have the suffix that Unreal is usually more familiar with. But at this moment here, everything else still looks the same. We've just only extracted out the left and the right side and put it as a suffix. You can kind of take this and modify it to how you see fit, but there are various ways you can improve upon this and make your own rule sets. What's also something to note here is that we also have these checkboxes beside each bone that has been flagged for renaming. if you don't want a specific bone to be included, you can uncheck these checkboxes so that whenever we hit the rename bone, these specific bones that are captured in the renaming rules will be skipped and will not be renamed. From this point on, we're going to take a look at some of the default rules that we've established. So in this specific example here, we have a VRoid character that we downloaded as a sample character. Because this is one of our supported templates, you can just select VRoid here, and it brings in all these rules that we've predefined for you. So from this point on, you can see that all the bones here are named in a specific way that is respective to the standard Unreal bone naming conventions. You can see that we have root, pelvis, spine, up to spine 3, and everything is _L_R, and it carries over throughout. And with the upper arm, lower arm, hand convention, as well as the thigh, calf, foot, ball convention, as well as the naming conventions for the fingers: index, pinky, middle, ring, thumb. So with minimal effort, if you have a specific standard rig, this can take you from the default naming that is provided by the vendor straight into the Unreal naming. We have some other examples here. So we also have an Xsens rig here as an example. So you can see the naming of the standard Xsens bone names. We can select Xsens, and now we have them all kind of mapped to the standard Unreal naming here. Likewise, we have a Vicon example here. We take the Vicon example here, and you can also see the similar results. Note that the Vicon does not have a root bone. We have a separate tool that's free on the VAB store that allows you to add a root bone. If you're interested, please leave a comment, and we'll point you to the reference of the link for the root bone adder. Yeah, so this is mostly it for setting up the rules. From this point on, before we actually apply the rules and show you the final results, we have other few options that are pretty nice to know in case you guys want to use these features. So after you've defined these rules, whether they are the template or your custom set of rules, so let's say you add like a few more rules at the bottom, and you want to do some stuff here, you can also save this entire rule set by clicking the save button here. And if you can save it to something like the desktop, you can call it custom, for example. Let's type it in, custom. And if, let's say, at a later point in time, you come back to this and you want to recall that rule set, you can click open, and then you can click custom, and then it brings the entire rule set back. So where this is helpful is in case you create a rule set, you leave Unreal, you come back another day, another time, and you want to apply the same rule set to another set of meshes. This is really helpful to just recall the set of rules so you don't have to rebuild the rules from scratch again and waste a lot of time setting that up. All right, so let's take a look at an example of some before and afters. So this is our Vicon rig. In the first example, what we'll do is we will create a new skeletal mesh and skeleton. But to do that, we just click this checkbox and then we hit this button to create a new one. And why it's kind of important to use some of these features is that if you do it this way with the checkbox on, you don't have to worry about mangling or destroying your source mesh. This creates a new skeletal mesh and a new skeleton, and it renames the bones accordingly as so. And if you do it with the standard way, if you uncheck this, you can see that this is this asset right here. After we hit rename, you'll see this warning here that warns you that, hey, we're going to actually change the skeletal mesh and the skeleton. Are you sure you want to continue? If you press OK, it will create the modifications, and you can see that there's an asterisk denoting that these have actually changed. And if you open it again, you'll see that we've actually changed the mesh in place. So just to be careful, if you're not using revision control, this is a destructive process. Note that we don't auto save for you. So in the case you do actually want to revert, you can select all of these guys, right click, and then go asset actions and go reload. And then this should get you guys back to where you are before you perform the rename action. A couple of other things to note is that with the skeletal mesh editor actually open for the actual skeletal mesh, and if you run the operation on it, you won't necessarily see the changes on the skeletal mesh right away because it doesn't refresh the skeleton automatically for you. So in this case, we have the skeletal mesh open, and if we run the operation again, hit that button again, you'll see that the skeleton and the skeletal mesh has been changed and is marked like this dirty. But if we go back to here, you'll see that the changes haven't shown up. To get around this, you just have to close the skeletal mesh window and then open it again to see the changes. And in this specific case, you actually didn't see the changes. And the reason for that is because we've actually primed and loaded this slot here into the bulk bone renamer. When we did the reload action here, it actually made this slot here dirty. So meaning that it's actually no longer a valid mesh because the memory location pointer is actually invalid. So after we've reloaded and then reprimed it again, it's possible to just either you have to unload this and then drag the mesh in again, or just run it a second time, get you your way through. So if you close that again and you open it again, you should see the changes update. So there are a couple of ways to get around that. So let's just make sure you see that once more. So if we right click, and with this is already preloaded, and then we do a reload on this guy. So with everything closed, we run this. And you'll see that it hasn't been renamed again. So to get around this, we have we'll try the other option is we unload this so that we bring in a fresh instance of this one, and then we hit it again, and then this should be ready to go. So just be careful with this. It is a destructive process if you are not using revision control, and if you guys aren't creating a new mesh along the way each time. But if you are using a new mesh each time, you shouldn't run into that memory problem that I just showed you earlier if you're working on the exact same mesh. But this is just something to be aware of in case you're running it and you don't see the changes update as you would expect. But it's always good as a habit because of how the skeletal mesh editor doesn't refresh the skeleton for you necessarily all the time, is to remember to close the window and open it again just to double check. And if you still aren't 100% convinced that these skeletons have actually been changed, it's always good to go into the skeleton, just open it up and double check that the naming is correct in the skeleton as well. All right, so hope that helps you guys. This should help you save a ton of time if you have a lot of meshes that are in a different naming space out of maybe different programs like Maya or Houdini or other programs, and you just kind of need to get them to fit into a specific naming scheme, either within Unreal or outside of Unreal. You can do this bulk renaming here and even export the FBX back out if you need it outside as well. Yep, so hope you guys enjoy using this tool. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave us a message on the YouTube video or join us in our Discord, and hope to see you guys in our next tool.